The following program is brought to you by Podcast One Sportsnet. Don't forget to download our new Podcast One app.
He's defeated every champion from every organization the sport of mixed martial arts has ever seen and retired from the octagon as the biggest draw and the industry's highest paid athlete of all time. And now Chael Sonnen's on PodcastOne.com. And for that, you're welcome.
What's happening, guys? Happy Wednesday, and thank you for joining another special episode of Your Welcome. You know, right out of the gate in the news, Sage Northcutt is gone from the UFC. I don't know where he's going. I saw some reports of one championship. I don't know if that's official, though. I don't believe it is, and I know Sage was talking about that a while ago, possibly going over to one championship. So it leads me to believe that that is going to be the next place he pops up, but I don't know about that. I suppose if he's a free agent, I suppose he'll go talk to everybody. And it always seems like a very peculiar move. You know, it always seems like a very weird move when a guy is signed to a major promotion and elects to go elsewhere. But that doesn't mean it's the wrong move. It just always strikes me as interesting. We've seen some guys do that, even some guests of the show, professional wrestlers that were in the WWE and then, you know, were asking for their release so they could go in, try their hand on the indie circuit or the open circuit, which is where most guys start to try to get to the WWE. So anytime you see it in a reverse order like that, it's peculiar. We even had a guy on the show that came on and announced on this show that he wanted his release from the WWE. And when we talked to him, he said he wanted to go out, he wanted to go on the indie circuit, but his overwhelming goal was to get back to the WWE. That part just had me scratching my head. I never made sense of that. And I'm sure there was a reasonable answer. I just got lost on it somewhere. Going, okay, you're where you want to end up, but you want to leave here. Some part of that confused me. So I don't know what Sage's goals are. I certainly wish him the best, and I would say that I would think that he would be a commodity for somebody. You know, I think he's got a great look. I think he's a young guy. I think that his skills are developing. I think he comes out there and competes hard each time. So that's really that. I have nothing to break on that, but I did see I saw a big fight announcement over the week since I've talked to you guys. Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva. And there's a few moving parts here. First off, wow, incredible fight. Second off, okay, look at the odds of that fight. Izzy comes out as a favorite, but full respect to Anderson, right? I mean, what a cool move for Anderson accepting that fight. Certainly Izzy isn't somebody that Anderson looks at and goes, oh, yeah, easy night. And I think Anderson deserves credit. You know, he went and stepped in there with Cormier on about 2 days' notice, 3 days' notice at the most for UFC 200. I mean, he's done so at a different weight class, not training. Was in a different country. They had to fly him. I mean, he's done some cool stuff over the years that has been good for the sport and good for the company. When you look at this fight, this could be great for Anderson. Anderson goes out, beats Izzy, boom. He's fighting for a title next. Izzy beats Anderson, boom. He's fighting for a title next. I mean, there's heavy implications on this fight. I think we could all agree to that. Even if you wanted to complain and go, well, what about Jacare and what about Yoel and what about Rockhold? And have those conversations all you want, but I think we still understand this fight is to clearly figure out the number one contender. And on that same card, which is also relevant to the story, is Gastelum versus Whitaker for the belt. So you could only envision that the post-fight press conference, boom, you make the next fight. You also have to understand, Izzy had turned down a standby spot to fill in should something happen to Whitaker or Gastelum and go right in for the belt. Or end up like Kamaru Usman did, where he just gets the check for training, gets to pay his trainers and his managers, makes weight, goes to the medicals, and never gets to compete, and then has to jump right back in line. He turned that down. But it is relevant that he's now on the card with Anderson, because should either Gastelum or Whitaker not be able to move forward, somebody from that fight will. Will it be Anderson? Will it be Izzy? I don't know. But somebody from that fight that is now on that card will step in. So that's a bit of a talking point, whether it comes to fruition or not. But now that's become a little bit more clear. And Israel Adesanya had come out. I'm going to call him Izzy, guys. It's quicker, less syllables, but he had come out, I think it was over the weekend, a number of days ago, and he said, I sold Dana White on my master plan. Now, a few takeaways from that. First off, did that even happen? Did he have a master plan? Did he sell Dana on it? Was that just something catchy he was going to say for a headline? I'm going to take it at face value. I believe he did have a master plan, and I believe he presented it, and I believe he got Dana to go, yeah, okay, I like that. What we don't know is what that plan was. But now we know an element of it. An element of it was, give me Anderson Silva. Give me a huge name guy who's widely respected. Let me see if I can beat him, and then I can become a huge name guy who's widely respected. And if you look at that match, it's a very compelling matchup for a couple of reasons. Izzy is currently largely what Anderson was. And when I say that, I don't agree that anything with Anderson has diminished over time. I think he was a fantastic fighter back when. I think he's a fantastic fighter now. However, Israel Adesanya does get to the punch a little bit quicker, and speed is something that comes with age. I don't know that he's distinctly faster than Anderson Silva, but I think that it's something that would be fair for you to point out. Anderson Silva has never been in there with a better stand-up fighter. That is my opinion. And if I am forgetting somebody, guys, please correct me, but I can't remember him being in there with a better stand-up fighter. The belief with Anderson was always you have to get him off his feet. Do not try to fight with him on his feet. He's too tricky, he's too cagey, and he's too dynamic. He'll use his knee bone, he'll use his elbow as much as he'll use his hands and his feet. He's just very, very hard to get a read on. I think that's right. I don't think he's ever been in there with somebody that we've thought is a more dynamic or even a equally dynamic stand-up kickboxing Muay Thai style fighter. I think that we would agree that Izzy fits that bill largely because Adesanya came from this. So many people forget that. So many times he doesn't get credit for what he did before he ever got to mixed martial arts. I believe his record in kickboxing was 29-3. I know I'm close, even if I've got that wrong. That's off the top of my head, but I think it was 29-3. So he'd been in there, over 30 times. Exclusively stand-up fight. Very good stand-up fighter. When you take somebody like Anderson, who was this great Muay Thai fighter, who was doing Muay Thai stand-up kickboxing bouts, he also, in conjunction with that, secretly, but was working on the ground game. He had a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So when he came over to mixed martial arts, boom, he was just one of the most complete fighters there was. And it took over a decade. And guys still couldn't catch him. That's how far he was ahead of the game. He was so far ahead of the game that 10 years later, he's still ahead of the game. Okay. Adesanya largely just represents that same thing. And we don't see it very often. That's why it's celebrated. It's celebrated and we discuss it because it's an anomaly of sorts. We see many grapplers, whether they came from the world of competitive jiu-jitsu or the world of competitive wrestling, but we see many of them come into mixed martial arts, develop the stand-up skills, and be able to go on and have really great careers. We don't see that as much with guys who came in striker heavy. The strikers, the boxers, the kickboxers, that then have to learn the grappling, learn a 5-minute round as opposed to 3. I mean, it's different and it's rare. And you could take that all the way back to the mid-'90s when Maurice Smith went on his run. And Maurice Smith became the first ever striker to go on and reach the heights and ultimately a world championship, and I believe an induction into the Hall of Fame. But it was so shocking back then. We all thought we had the sport figured out. All had it figured out because of Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock. We all had it figured. Dan Severn gets credit. That you had to be a better grappler than your opponent. You were going to beat him in an actual fight. Maurice came along and goes, not so fast. If I can keep this fight standing up, I can slow these wrestlers down. I can chop their legs and punch them in the face. And it was just an interesting time. But that time then got put on hold, in large part for 20 years. It got put on hold till you started seeing these great strikers coming back. Jose Aldo comes to mind, of course, Anderson Silva, who we're talking about. And now, Israel Adesanya. And Anderson, to my knowledge, and I don't think I've ever missed an Anderson fight. I think I've seen them all. To my knowledge, Anderson has never been in a fight where he has then said, hey, you know what? I don't like this realm, being the stand-up. I'm going to take this thing to the ground. I don't think that's ever happened. And it would be interesting in a stand-up battle if Israel Adesanya gets the jump on him. It would be very interesting to see Anderson for the first time force a clinch. We've seen Anderson wrestle a lot. We've seen him wrestle from the clinch on his feet, do work off of the bottom. But we've never seen him force the position. We've just seen him react to the position. So in that regard, for so many years. And Anderson is must-watch TV for me, even as his opponent, even as a guy he rubbed the wrong way plenty of times. I didn't want to miss seeing him fight. There was something going to happen. There was going to be a learning experience. There was going to be something, and there was a reason you needed to tune in. If for nothing else, aside from the great competitive match, aside from the stakes of this match, that one of them truly will go and fight for the world championship next. For sure. For sure. I'm right about that. If this season of college football has gotten you fired up, then just wait, because the regular season is coming to an end and the college football postseason is about to heat up. 4 teams will be selected to play in the college football playoff, airing Saturday, December 29th, only on ESPN. The selection show will be December 2nd at noon Eastern on ESPN, and they will unveil the 4 teams playing in back-to-back playoff semifinal games. The following teams have a shot to make the college football playoff: Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan, Georgia, University of Oklahoma, LSU, yes, they're still in the running, Washington State, and the University of Central Florida and Ohio State. And it goes without saying that it's make or break time in college football. Check out the College Football Playoff Selection Show on December 2nd at 12 noon Eastern, and don't miss College Football Playoff itself, airing Saturday, December 29th, only on ESPN. Aside from all of that, I would also predict for you, you're going to see a different Anderson Silva, okay? You're going to see him for the first time ever, perhaps, forcing that clinch, looking for a takedown, perhaps. The other side of that is, why did Anderson accept this fight? So many people think that he does not have much of a chance, that he is the old guard taking on the new guard. I don't have the answer to that. Some guys aren't all bullies. Not everybody only accepts fights they know that they can win. Some guys still want to go out there and compete and test themselves. And if they don't have enough, if they didn't work hard enough, if Father Time has, then they'll pass the torch to the next guy. That's part of being the competitor. You go out there and you do it anyway. Perhaps that's a side. I don't know if Anderson has that. Perhaps it's a side. But I think the other side, which is more likely, is I think Anderson likes the match. I think Anderson Silva, who's had to go out there and has had overwhelming success when he can keep fights on his feet, has always had to deal with a guy who's trying to take him down, who's watched his highlight reels, who's followed his career, and who wants to get him to the floor. I think Anderson may look at this fight and go, finally, you give me a guy that fights the way I want to fight. We're going to stand up and fight. And the question of just how good Anderson is, look, we've answered the question on how good his career has been on the world championships and the defending of those championships, of keeping that intact night after night, 2 different weight classes for years, 3 different weight classes. If you want to look before UFC, he was down to 170 pounds, 3 different weight classes. But we never really answered the question, what exactly can he do specifically in this realm when he has a dance partner who is willing to keep the fight there the entire time? I think that it just makes for a fascinating match. As I'm looking at matches, yes, I do think that the younger guy, Adesanya, I recognize he's the favorite. I think he should be. I think there's good reason, but I also think that there's going to be a very compelling story here to just how good is Anderson at what we've all seen him be brilliant at when the other guy allows him to work at that range. I think it makes for a really interesting match. I think it's going to put Anderson in a spot that we've simply never seen him. Right when you think you've seen it all. I mean, is there very many veterans? Is there very many icons of the sport that have been around that long that you could possibly think, well, no, he's done everything. I've seen him with everything, and some tests he passed and some tests he failed, but there's nothing new out there. Well, no, this is new. This is 100% new, where Anderson is taking on, at least on paper, a guy who's better on his feet than him. I don't believe that's ever happened, just the paper of it. I don't think anybody ever had a resume to match Anderson's on his feet. But then also in a guy who is not going to shoot, who is not going to force a clinch and be looking for a takedown, who is willing to play Anderson's game as long as it needs to be played. I don't think we've ever seen that. Even George St. Pierre, put him in there with strikers, put him in there with grapplers, put him in there with all-around guys. I don't think you could pull George out and put him in with a style that he's never seen. I don't think you could pull Randy Couture out of retirement and do the same thing to him, or Dan Henderson, just by example. The guys that have been around that long, been in there, done it all, seen it all, over multiple weight classes, over a decade. I think that this is a real unforeseen. I think there's a lot of question marks on this. And I think anybody that's saying, Anderson doesn't belong in there and Adesanya is going to run him over. Okay, maybe, but you actually haven't seen a fight like this for Anderson. It's different. They're playing his game. Lot to risk. Look, when somebody comes and plays your game, if he gets over on you, lot to risk for Anderson, which in large part is why my respect for Anderson went up by him saying yes when they called and asked him to do this fight.
You're listening to You're Welcome with Chael Sonnen.
Alexa isn't the only one with breaking news. Make sure to hang around at the end of this podcast for the latest breaking headlines on the AP News Minute.
Podcast One Sports is your home for the Underdog Sports Network. Join Chris Horwoodell and friends each week as they cover the biggest stories in sports with shows like Tales from the Association, the Underdog Sports NFL Show, and You're Wrong and Here's Why.
You can't rely on draft picks a lot of times with quarterbacks. There's 4 to 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first round that are complete busts.
Check out all these exciting shows on the Underdog Sports Network every week on Podcast One or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Listen up. Let me introduce you to PowerDot, the world's smartest muscle recovery and performance tool. PowerDot is a personal e-stimulation device that is lightweight and connects to a mobile app via Bluetooth so you can take it with you anywhere. It's recovery on the go. PowerDot helps prevent injuries by activating specific muscle fiber types before you train or compete to give you that edge. I've been using PowerDot to supplement my training, helping me build muscle strength and promote regeneration by flushing out the lactic acid and bringing in that oxygen-rich blood. High-level athletes and physicians have been using this technology for decades, and now you can get in on it for an affordable price. Do you guys want in on this incredible device? Well, the good folks at PowerDot are giving listeners of this show only a chance to win a PowerDot unit. Go to powerdot.com/welcome for more information on how to enter. Use the promo code WELCOME at checkout, and you will get 20% off of your order. Again, that's powerdot.com/welcome for your chance to win. And remember to enter the code WELCOME to get 20% off of your order. Get the pain relief you need at your fingertips and on the go with PowerDot.
Now, back to You're Welcome with Chael Sonnen.
Oh, Tito versus Chuck. Look, I don't know that anything happened that wasn't expected to happen. Did it? Now, the match itself, I will fully concede you was a bit of a surprise. In fact, you know what? Let's start there. No, let's not start there. Let's end there. Let's just start with the night. Okay, I don't know that anybody was stunned. I thought that the production was good. I have seen excellent production. I have seen extraordinary production. I've seen great production. It was good. I thought it was good. The card was not loaded. We knew that, but we knew these things coming in. So I don't think firing any shots after the bell here really makes us some kind of geniuses. It was more that we just got what we expected to get. I thought there was good talent. I thought Deron Winn looked really good. You know, for the few of you that watched the show, I thought one of the bigger storylines maybe was Deron Winn. I've known him for a meaningful period of time. He was an amateur wrestler. I knew that he could go out and do those things. But to actually walk out in a large venue, in a co-main event spot, and do them are totally different. And do them against a very tough, gritty veteran in Lawler. So, okay, that was one of the highlights. I thought that the crowd, whether they papered the house, which means to give tickets away, whether they begged them to come in, bust them in, I don't really know that it makes a damn bit of difference. I've been on some smaller shows where they paper the house and you still couldn't get anybody to come. I don't know that it makes a difference. They had people in that building. I would guess they probably had 6,000 people in the building. If I was to give you a prediction before that show, I would have hit it more about 4,500. So I wouldn't have been terribly off, but I would have been off. I thought that was a good sign for them. Get to the main event. Tito's walkout. I actually watched this fight with the Godfather, and Joel thought that it was just terrible from a level of production. He thought that the walkout was terrible. And I believe it was Fred Durst who sang the song, but the song starts out and says, "Who's in the house? Who's in the house?" Says that over and over again, and they give you the answer, Tito is in the house. And it's kind of done by acoustics, and it's a little bit cheesy. However, I loved it. I thought it was great because that's the same walkout and the same level of production going way back to like UFC 14 that Tito had come out to. Tito had come out and at that time, that was like cutting edge, that Fred Durst was singing and was by his side. I think Fred Durst is with Limp Bizkit, if I remember correctly, but they were a big band at the time. He was a very famous guy, and all of a sudden he was involved in MMA on some level, which was just Tito. But then he even sang Tito a song. For that, I can just tell you guys, for that moment in time when that first happened, it was a cool moment. And yes, you might have watched it this weekend or heard about it from this weekend, and it was a cheesy moment. Well, be a little bit nostalgic here. I thought it was very cool, but I also got it, okay? And it also did make me very grateful for where the sport is at today, because on the weekend, people were laughing at this. But to take you back the first time that it was done and the level of production and the cameras and the expense, or I should say lack of production, cameras, and expense, it was really cool at the time. It just shows you how much the sport has grown. So I don't fully agree with people on that. All of a sudden, Chuck walks out. Chuck's got a pretty cool walkout. He comes out. One of the first guys I've ever seen limp to the ring. And Chuck has a bit of a distinguished walk. And I don't know what else to refer, but as he was walking to the ring, I was thinking, and I hadn't seen Chuck walk in a while, I was thinking, is that distinguished walk, if you will? Or is he limping? I was never clear. I still don't know that I have the answer. But as Chuck went to the ring, I thought, well, something seems amiss here. So the fight starts, and not for nothing, both of these guys physically look very good. They both worked for this moment. I think they should get some credit, and that's probably about as nice as I can get in this whole thing. So there's nice, Chael. Now let's get down to the realness of what we saw. Look, I don't know that we should have been surprised. Chuck did not leave this sport on his own 8 years ago. Chuck was forced out of the sport. So he was not on a high note then. He was not a very dangerous athlete when he left. We do not get better at something by not doing it. So 8 years later, to make believe that a guy is going to come in as good as he was when he left, or better, which is only in make-believe land, and somewhere in our brains we do tend to do that, with absolutely no training footage. And I know you guys are going to say, I saw Chuck hitting some mitts. That's not training footage. There are people that hit mitts that will never get in there to compete. Training footage is sparring. Not only did we never see any sparring, we never even heard rumors of it. We never even heard interviews of guys saying, yeah, you know what, I sparred with Chuck the other day and thought he looked pretty good. Or, yeah, I sparred with Chuck and he's got some stuff to work on. We never heard those words. And we live in a small community here. There's only so many gyms and so many trainers. You got a big guy, a name guy like Chuck in the world of social media. Somebody's going to talk about it. We never saw a picture anywhere, a video anywhere, or even somebody speak on it and say, I sparred with Chuck. So when he goes out there and competes and he can't hit anything but the air, I don't know that we should be stunned. Anybody can look good on pads. Anybody can look bad on pads. One's got nothing to do with the other. That's nothing more than a cardio bust. Get your heart rate up a little bit. Work on your timing. A mitt workout is largely how you sell people to come into your gym because they see it on TV and it looks cool and you can leave them with a false sense that they know how to fight. It's like the karate business. You don't ever put the kid actually in there with an opponent. You have him punch the air, and then you assure him after practice that if his father continues to pay $114 a month every month, you'll continue to make his kid a dangerous weapon. That's all mitts are. I see a lot of you weighing on the mitts or how somebody looked on a mitt. You can look good on mitts or you can look bad on mitts. It's got nothing to do with anything. You have to be in front of an opponent sparring, and we never even heard a rumor, a leaked footage, a training video, a caption, a snapshot on social media ever that Chuck had done that. So when you go out and watch him compete, I thought that it became pretty clear. Yet we hadn't heard of any of those things because it simply didn't happen. He couldn't find his target. And when you guys watch that on TV, you will think that's very easy. You'll think that's very easy to do, to walk out and punch somebody. You'll think what you need to work on is your combinations or your power or your endurance to be able to continue to do it. I can tell you, if you are not a trained fighter and you go to throw a punch at something that is moving, it doesn't just happen. It's really hard to do. Trained fighters that take a few months off, take a break, have an injury, come back in the room, that's the first thing they have to work on. They literally can't make a punch and touch that target in front of them if it's moving. It's a range issue, it's a timing issue, and it's a repetitive muscle issue. It's the only way you can be able to do it. It's very complex. It looks easy on TV, but if you ever actually go out and try to do it, it's very hard to hit something that doesn't want to be hit. So if Chuck wasn't practicing that and he was only hitting mitts, you could see why he couldn't find Tito. I don't think that Chuck is as slow as he appeared on TV. A lot of people were saying he was slow. What I was seeing from more of a trained eye was he didn't know where the target was. A couple of times it looked like he was throwing punches. He was more putting his hand out there trying to see where's this guy at. And Tito doesn't even have a whole lot of movement. Tito's not Mr. Fast. And Chuck just simply couldn't find him. And that's because he didn't have the repetitiveness in the gym. You like saving money, right? You know what's even better? Saving hundreds of dollars on car insurance. Well, if that revs your engine, then get ready for this because you can do it right from your living room. All you have to do is go to geico.com, and in 15 minutes, you could be saving 15% or more on car insurance. Extra money in your pocket? It just might be the most rewarding thing you do today. Now, many people are instantly calling for Chuck to retire and saying we never want to see that again. That is one theory. That is one theory, and that is a reality that every fighter will face at some point. And frankly, so will the football players and the baseball players and the basketball. Everybody will experience that at some point. That point could be now. But I will just tell you the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin is you don't have to give in to that. The other side of the coin is you can go out there and learn from that experience and say, I'm going to get better. The other side of the coin is you can say, I froze up and here's why. The other side of the coin would be I could not find my target, but here's why. And maybe I just accurately identified it, which is he was hitting too many mitts, jumping too much rope, and not having an opponent in front of him enough in something called sparring. Perhaps that terrible performance that he had will be the worst performance that we've ever seen him have, and perhaps he never returns to that again. He only gets better. I will share with you openly that I do not know the answer to this because I do not know Chuck's lifestyle, and I do not know how hard he trained for this. I know he did not have his longtime coach, Coach Hackelman, in his corner. I believe for the first time in his career, I do not believe that Coach Hackelman was even part of the training. I say that because Chuck was training in L.A. and Coach Hackelman lives in San Luis Obispo. So I don't think that they were even together. When you change things up like that, I would love to know the backstory. I would love to know why he did not train with Coach Hackelman, who led him to multiple world championships. I would love to know what happened there. But it still does come back to the preparation and the training. And to say that Chuck is done because he had a bad day, I will simply remind you guys, so do you. So do you. You just don't have a camera on you. Whatever profession you're in, all of you have gone to work, gone home that night and went, whoa, that wasn't a good day. Hope nobody knows that I did that today. Glad nobody saw that. And then you got to fix it the next day. You got to come back and do better. Learn from your mistakes. Make sure it doesn't happen again. Wake up maybe on a better side of the bed, on a better note. Go out and have a better day. When you're in this sport and you only get to go to work on camera one day in the last 8 years, and it happens to be a bad day, you're busted. You're caught. There is no getting away with it. There's no coming in tomorrow and doing better. So I would just make sure to remind you of that. If it is an age issue, and that's a very real thing, and we do not get better with time as human beings, sadly. If that is what's happened, well, then we can address that too. But I would like to encourage anybody on the mindset that if you go out and have a day at work and it doesn't go well, you do not have to concede and lay down and roll over and get up. You can get up the next day and work harder and try to fix it and move forward. I think that that's going to be a hard thing for Chuck. As much as I want to make that point, I think it's going to be a hard thing, only because there is no lesser opponent he could ever get than Tito Ortiz. Tito's terrible. And Chuck said as much. That isn't just sour grapes by Chael. Chuck said it. Chuck goes, look, I'm fighting Tito because he's terrible. He's the easiest opponent that I could possibly find, and I want this as a warm-up fight. And Chuck wasn't doing promotion. Chuck doesn't even understand that. Trash talk and building something. Chuck doesn't get any of those things. Chuck's a very candid, open guy. For better or worse. He'll tell you good things, he'll tell you bad things, he'll tell you in between. But if you ever want to know something on Chuck, just ask him the question. So when he came out and he said, look, Tito's the easiest, he wasn't burying Tito. He was just being honest. You know, at my age and coming back, I'm a little apprehensive about this, so I grabbed a guy who isn't far from my age, who's all supposed to have been sitting on his ass, who also doesn't lead the cleanest lifestyle, and who I've whipped a couple of times, easily. That's why I want to fight. So if you're to take Chuck at his word, and you should, he was very open and honest about that, and he was correct, where do you go? Where do you go from there? You can't just throw him in an under, let's just give him an up-and-comer. Oh, that's the last thing you want. The last thing you want is some up-and-comer. So who would you give him? And I heard some talk. I must say this to weigh in on this personally. I heard some talk as I was roughing up the debacle that was this event, that Chael was pining for a fight with Chuck. That's accurate by you guys. That was very accurate by you if you would have said that on Friday. After that fight, I will tell you in no uncertain terms, I am not looking for a fight with Chuck. I would not accept a fight with Chuck, including if that were offered to me. I would not accept that fight. So if any of you were thinking, old Chael's looking ahead here, yeah, sure. Would love to have whipped both of those guys on Friday. After I saw what I saw, we're good. You then look at the conclusion of the fight, which is only the disaster that is Tito Ortiz. And he tries so hard. And poor Tito. I mean, there are times where Tito is trying to be a nice guy. It just doesn't exist. He just can't do it. He just got an inability. He is a narcissist to the highest of levels, and he's a terrible communicator to the highest of levels. So when you combine those two, you really have a thing of magic. Okay, this is great. First off, Tito's doing his post-fight speech, and he's thanking everyone in the world, right? He does not know at this point, part of his narcissism, combined with these just generally not very intelligent. He does not know nobody's watching. He thinks he is performing this in 1 million+ households, okay? He does not understand by any level of metrics that the people that are there live were given tickets and nobody bought this show. So he's cutting this interview, this heroic moment, this winner's moment interview. I mean, Jiminy Christmas, it took him 5 minutes and he wasn't in there in a fight. It took him 4 minutes before he realized, I'm not fighting anybody. There's nobody in here. There's just a guy over here. I just need to go touch him one time and we can all go home. And it still took him over 4 minutes to touch him. But he doesn't have the self-awareness to do this, and it's so genuine, which is what makes his interview so wonderful. Just this wonderful disaster to watch. So he's doing his interview, and he just wants Chuck to know. He just wants Chuck to know this is the best Tito Ortiz that the world has seen in 21 years. Now, there was a part of Tito within that message that was trying to say, hey, Chuck, don't be hard on yourself. This isn't a rebuke on you. This is a narrative that I am that good. He meant it to be nice. As hard, as arrogant as that sounds, that was actually what his message was. But what he effectively did, without communicating that well, was he also went ahead and covered the 2 losses that he had to Chuck. He went ahead and kind of tried to wipe away those losses without accepting any responsibility to the fact that he took on a guy who barely got a license and hadn't done it in 8 years, and back to that 8-year date was forced out of the sport. He didn't take any kind of consideration into that. So then they go to interview Chuck, who not for nothing really is a very nice guy. I mean, in victory or in defeat, what you see is what you get. He's a very straight and genuine guy. He's just been humiliated. He just lost to the worst fighter in the sport. A guy who he openly said ahead of time is the worst fighter in the sport, and if I can't beat him, I don't even belong in this sport. And he's trying to say his piece like a gentleman when all he wants to do is get to the back, hang his head, and pretend this didn't go into denial for about the next hour before he gets in a shower and goes on about his day. That's just how this works. Tito cuts into the interview. Okay, this is Chuck's moment, and it's Chuck's moment largely because, and even in defeat, this will be his last moment in front of an audience with a microphone. This will be his last moment. In many ways, the likelihood of that is very realistic. Tito interrupts him. Couldn't give him his moment. Interrupts him and then says, I'm very respectful, and then wants to make his point. Wants to make his point because he's respectful. Okay, you just interrupted a guy, for one. You just interrupted a guy who's humiliated because he lost to you. So to then declare that you're respectful after butting into his last 15 minutes of fame that he's going to get in his lifetime in this industry that he did help create, not for nothing, Tito somehow offered him a job. Somewhere in there, Tito said, hey, Chuck, I know you're saying and you're thinking about retiring. You just have to understand this was the best Tito ever, and we would love for you to compete at Golden Boy for as long as you'd like to. We have a home for you. So we're all sitting around, turning our head to the left, turning our head to the right, going, wait a minute, did Tito just claim that he owned Golden Boy? Like Tito's in a position to be offering jobs to anybody? Yes, he did. That is what Tito did. And that was the highlight of the night in so many ways. And Tito has come out this week, and he's saying, hey, man, I don't feel like I'm getting the credit that I deserved. I feel everybody's kicking Chuck, but nobody's telling me good job. Well, that's a real thing. That is a real thing where as a fighter, when you're out there and you're just looking for that pat on the back, which is largely all you get. And I know the viewer will think, well, he got a paycheck and he got some esteem. I get that comes with it, but for the most part, fighters just want to be told good job. They're just like little kids. They're like little kids that go to soccer practice and do their best to get that ball into the goal so that somebody will tell them good job. That's a real thing. So when Tito was coming out and going, man, nobody's doing that. They're all burying Chuck. That, again, was just part of a narcissistic's lack of awareness. It's like, Tito, I don't know where to tell you good job. You did overcome a mental battle, and you did get over on a guy who humiliated you younger in your career. That's true, and he should get some credit for that. Tito did not know, the same as we did not know, that Chuck wasn't going to fight that night. We did not know that Chuck could not make a fist, throw it in a forward direction, and touch the target in front of him. We simply didn't know that. We had created illusions of grandeur in our minds. So Tito does get credit because he was in the same spot. He didn't know that. He does not get credit for the fact that for 4 minutes fighting nothing, he was able to do nothing. He was able to secure no major shots, no takedown, no submission attempts, no clinch, no ground, nothing. He was able to do nothing for 4 minutes fighting nobody. There was not a fight to be had. Having a full head of hair can make a big difference when it comes to your confidence. Our sponsor, Hair Club, knows all about this, and they're inviting you to become part of the Hair Club family to see how getting the most out of your hair can change your life. Hair Club is the leader in total hair solutions with a legacy of success for over 40 years. Whether you're looking to revitalize the growth of your own hair or learn more about the hair replacement or restoration, Hair Club's professionally trained stylists, hair health experts, and consultants will craft a personalized solution to ensure you feel your best and get the most out of your hair. Just for listeners of this podcast, go to hairclub.com/Chael today for a free hair analysis and free take-home hair care kit. That's a $300 value. Again, that's hairclub.com/Chael for a free hair analysis and a free take-home hair care kit to see for yourself just how powerful great hair can be. Experience your hair and your life at its best only with Hair Club. I want to say this on Chuck because so many people have been caught. Look, it was a bad performance. I saw what you guys saw, and I'm not sugarcoating it. And yeah, he lost to a bum. That's true. But there was also some talk that he should never be able to do it again. And I think that that's what earlier, the point that I was really trying to push back on, which is one mindset would tell you he should not be able to do it again. A fighter's mindset would tell you, I need to work harder, I need to make changes, and I need to try it again. That was a bad night. I knew that was going to be a bad night. Ring rust is a real thing. In many ways, that was like doing it for a first time. I need that experience, but all of the experience. I need to see the lights, the camera, the action, have things coming at me in full speed. I now know that I need to be in the gym and I need to be sparring and I need to be working on some things. That would be what a fighter's mindset would say. At most times, this is a bit of a unique situation because of the age. I'm just sharing with you when you guys are calling for that. It's a very tough conversation, and you're going to have a very hard time sounding intelligent having it. It's very simple to make the statement, get up and walk out of the room. But Executive Director Andy Foster was put on the spot for this, and this was not something that Andy Foster needed to answer. But Andy Foster deals with tough questions the same as he deals with easy questions. He answers all questions. He doesn't ever back down from the media. And the media simply asked him, what was your mindset when you licensed Chuck? And Andy Foster gave an answer, and its brilliance was within its simplicity, which is he told the truth and he told it very quickly, which was Chuck wanted to do it. He then went on to say, we have medicals in place that everybody has to be able to comply with, and he did. Well, guys, there's your answer. That's as straight as it comes, and you should all be able to relate with that. Any job that you guys have, how did that start? Well, you said you wanted to do it. You went in for an interview, you raised your hand, you said this is a job I can do. They took you at your word. You then get an opportunity to go and try. If you're right and your word was good, you're going to continue to try. If you were not right in your self-assessment ahead of time when you said, I want to do this and I can do this, then maybe you don't get to do it tomorrow. But Andy Foster's answer was spot on perfect. And so many people say, well, Chuck was out there taking damage. Like, well, okay, here, let's have a further debate on that. Set what Andy Foster said aside. That's done. That part is done. Now, Chael's jumping in here. But you got to be careful with the whole, Chuck took big damage. He came out, he took one shot, he fell down. Okay, that did happen, and it was not great. And that punch was not very hard, and it put him out. That, sure, may need looked at. His inability to take much of a blow without going down may need some review. I will concede that one to you. But the argument in the conversation is much broader than that, okay? Chuck is half naked in a cage fight against a former world champion. And the final analysis says that Chuck got punched one time. And if you want to sit and complain and you don't want to give your money and your participation, for an athlete like that. You do have that right. But to say that that athlete shouldn't be able to participate, or that some kind of damage was done, or that a governing body acted irresponsibly in letting that happen, guys, what are you saying? Are you saying that Chuck should have taken 10 big shots? Had Chuck been hit in the face by a former world champion 10 times, would that make you happier than him being hit once? What if Chuck was hit 80 times in the face over the course of a 15-minute contest and Chuck won the contest? Would you be having this conversation? Because if you have elected to hang your hat on the argument that Chuck should not be able to do it and somebody should have stepped in because he took one punch, then certainly you guys believe that the licenses of Yair and the Zombie should be revoked as well, because those guys ate well over 150 punches apiece and ended up in the hospital afterwards. So, no, of course you guys don't think that. Of course not. That's what the sport is. You try to hit him, you try to get him to not hit you. That's what the sport is. The sport was followed. The integrity of the sport, 100% and without question, was held up that night. And Chuck said he wanted to do it. And when a former world champion who can pass all of the medicals wants to come out of retirement and says he can do it, and has good, reputable trainers, managers, sparring partners, vouching for heaven's sakes, of course he should be able to do it. Of course. Absolutely. And frankly, he should be able to do it again. I will not make this conversation and this argument to you guys over and over. I will not forever say that that's true. There are plenty of guys where we have the commissions who step in and save themselves from themselves. That's true. But let's keep things in perspective. Yes, he was rusty, but he should have been. Yes, he was out of step in terms of his timing, but he should have been. And yes, if he wanted to try it again, I can all but assure you he will have a better performance. I cannot assure you that he could turn the tide, that he could find an opponent. I don't know that he will even be put in this spot, but I will assure you that the performance will be better. It may end the same. That's true. But the performance will be better. You did see him on a bad night. I think that chin is something that needs to be looked at. That punch that hit him was not a very good punch. And it did not just put him down, it put him out. And we've seen that a number of times with Chuck. We saw that he included in his previous fight, if you want to go way back 8 years, with Rich Franklin. I was there live. It wasn't much of a punch. Not a knock on Chuck, not a knock on Franklin. It's just the reality that over time, a fighter's chin does go. Is that something a commission is going to look at? I've never heard of them looking at that. As long as all the scans and all the medicals and everything's good, a guy is allowed to go out and take a punch when he's in a fist fight. But I would be open to the dialogue and the conversation. That show ultimately did well less than 50,000 buys. As big of a disaster as that is for the projections that they were making of 1 million buys, which was just insanity to start with, I will tell you, under 50,000, 35,000, whatever it did, not a terrible number for your first night in pay-per-view. Enough to make a promoter lose millions of dollars and never get in the space again, sure. I think that's probably what we're going to see with Golden Boy. I don't believe there's going to be a Golden Boy MMA Part 2, but that's just what I think. But I will just tell you, the pay-per-view business is extremely hard, and many, many people just don't understand that. They do not understand the education that goes on with fans. When we had Joel on this show last week and said he'd love to see the fight, he didn't know how to buy it. I answered that question for him by telling him, like you buy any other show, find out what time it's on, sit in front of the TV and push the button. But the fact that he didn't know that, and he is representative of a piece of the marketplace, that's just the way it goes. Pay-per-view is very tough. There is a number of things that are on TV that you guys would like to see, or I would like to see, but we don't know how. We don't know what day or time or channel. A lot of us don't even go to the movies anymore. We just wait for them to come out on rental. That's our system. That's how we see the movies we want. We check for what's for rent, and then we push the button. That's built within our DNA. I'm one of those guys. I love the movies. I've got kids. I don't get to go to the movie theater anymore. I watch it later. Many people are just simply like that. So when you're coming out of the gate with a pay-per-view, I'm just sharing with you, the pay-per-view business is very tough. It was a disaster by what they wanted to hope to do. The other side of it is, look, 35,000 people all sat down, paid too much money to watch two dinosaurs fight. Not a bad night. 60 seconds. When you think about it, that's actually a lot of time. You know what you can do in about a minute? Get an offer for your car at TrueCar. That's right. In the amount of time it takes you to floss your teeth, pet your dog, or do a few sit-ups, you can get a true cash offer. Best of all, you can do it all from your smartphone or even from home. Just go to TrueCar and simply enter your license plate number and watch as your car's details pop up. Answer a few questions, and you'll get an accurate True Cash offer from a local TrueCar certified dealer. It's that easy. After that, you bring your car, and they'll check it out with you. You'll do that together. They'll ask you some few questions. You'll get a few answers. So there's no surprises. Then simply leave with your check or trade in your new car for a new ride. So when you're ready to experience a better way to sell your trade-in, check out TrueCar today. Cash offers not available in all areas. I think I'm done. Nick, we got anything else? Any other topics? Anything break? We up to speed? Cool. Let's call it, guys. Thank you for listening, and make sure you are back on Friday because I will have some news by Friday. I'm working on a little something I should have as early as tomorrow. So come back on Friday. I will see you all then, and until then, I am Chael Sonnen. Thank you for listening. You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to You're Welcome with Chael Sonnen. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
The hit podcast Zane's World found a new home on Podcast One.
La Gonzalina. Probably should have corrected that before the show.
World traveler, author, and alcohol aficionado Zane Lamprey is well learned in the art of embracing a good time as he reviews the best attractions and destinations on the globe.
So we went to Black Market Liquor Bar.
Just tell us what you remember.
That's what I remember.
Check out Zane's World every Tuesday on Podcast One or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
ADT can design and install a smart home just for you, backed by 24/7 protection. A new smart home at your service, customized for your lifestyle. Set up custom automations unique to your home to automatically do the things like lock the doors or set the thermostat when you leave. Even close your garage door from virtually anywhere. ADT will set up your home with multiple smart home devices and security features like indoor and outdoor cameras, locks, lights, and garage door control, even video doorbells. Visit ADT.com/podcasts to learn more about how ADT can design and install a secure smart home just for you.